Derrick Rose, Kawhi Leonard, and Zion Williamson all had their careers derailed by injuries, along with several other stars. But today that changes as we remove injuries from the last 20 years of the NBA. And we'd already be seeing our first major change in the 2007 NBA Finals. Because while we'd still have LeBron leading the Cavs here, their opponent would be very different than our reality. We now had a fully healthy Yao Ming, just now entering the prime of his career, and at 7'6", he was one of the most intimidating forces in the entire league, putting up a double-double night in and out throughout the finals with nobody in Cleveland standing a chance. But despite Ming's incredible play, LeBron James was still arguably the best player in the league, and there's a reason he got his team to the finals. In real life, he was swept by the Spurs, but this Rockets team didn't have the same championship pedigree, and with that, LeBron was taking a commanding lead with expectations of winning a ring. And he very well may have, that is, if the Rockets didn't have another star now healthy. Tracy McGrady was another star whose career was limited by injuries, but now with an opportunity to rewrite his own narrative, he was going to be stepping up to the moment. After trailing by 2, T-Mac was totally flipping this series on its head, averaging over 30 points per night for the rest of the finals and cementing his team into NBA history.
Oh, and they've done it! The Houston Rockets are the new NBA champions! Just tremendous!
Now only one season into this experiment, NBA history is already completely changed. And while this change won't have a major domino effect, others will. For example, with the Blazers still drafting Greg Oden, who is actually living up to all the hype surrounding his name coming into the league, now winning Rookie of the Year over KD after putting up some monster averages throughout his debut season, paired with all-star caliber guard Brandon Roy no longer dealing with knee injuries, dishing out unbelievable highlights like this.
Here's Blake to Roy, this is for the...
And it would be safe to say that the Blazers would be in the playoff picture for years to come. Meaning they won't be in the lottery to draft Lillard down the line, which is just one of many changes coming soon, as we'll be seeing the league completely reimagined, with history being rewritten as we know it. But for now, this reality would be all too familiar, with the Boston Celtics' new Big Three still storming their way into the NBA Finals, and while the opponent was different this year, with Houston looking to repeat, the results would be identical to our reality. The Celtics were being crowned NBA champions in 08 again, but this may just be the last thing that remains the same in this simulation. Because while the Rockets are storming through the West again in 2009, just like we've seen for the past 2 seasons now, ultimately making their way back to the NBA Finals, out East things would be playing out differently. With Garnett now available to play during this postseason, he'd help his Celtics overcome the Orlando Magic to defend their title in the NBA Finals, where they would be doing exactly that, defeating Houston yet again, and now finally the first domino will be falling. With Portland getting the 6th seed, that means they're no longer a lottery pick. So this year's NBA draft, the order is completely different from what we know, and this entire league is about to be shaken up. With the 6th pick in the draft, the Grizzlies were taking DeMar DeRozan. Then moving up to the top 3 picks, we'd have some serious star power, to include Griffin to Washington, and with the 2nd pick, Harden was headed to the Bobcats. But these weren't even the best players in this draft.
With the first pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the New York Knicks select Stephen Curry from Davidson College.
New York has now acquired the greatest shooter of all time, sparking their rebuild as they add Steph to a roster of a few other young pieces, and Curry was going to be finding his fit within this team very quickly. With a full green light as the #1 option already, he'd lead all rookies in scoring, which was enough to become the Rookie of the Year. And even though the Knicks record still struggled, the future was surely bright with Steph, and Knicks fans were hyped.
They are the New York Knicks! Suck on the New York Knicks! Go New York, go New York, go!
But now we'll shift our focus back to the Houston Rockets, whose franchise has been benefiting the most so far from an injury-free NBA, because Tracy McGrady was on an absolute tear. He was already playing well for the past few years, but now he was pushing his game to an even higher level than before, earning the MVP of the league. Although his MVP season may be ending far shorter than he'd hoped. Up against the Lakers in the conference finals, Kobe Bryant was like a shark smelling blood in the water, The last 2 years, Houston was sending the Lakers home in the playoffs, but this year the Mamba wasn't allowing it. The Rockets' supporting cast this year was heavily weakened, and now was Bryant's opportunity to strike, winning the Western Conference, earning his first trip to the finals without Shaquille O'Neal. But there was a problem. With Kendrick Perkins now healthy come Game 7, the Celtics maintained their starting roster, and that would give them the edge over the Lakers, winning a tightly contested season-ending finale, giving Boston the first three-peat since, ironically enough, the Lakers. So now it's safe to say, with Kobe earning 2 less rings so far, this experiment has treated him the worst, but he wasn't alone, because Carmelo Anthony was also shifting his legacy, with New York no longer interested in making a move for him, meaning now Melo was stuck in Denver, who was eyeing the start of a rebuild with young budding talent after their franchise star announced interest in relocating. So now the Nuggets were far from contending anytime soon. As for the Knicks, they had a very good reason for not wanting to trade for Melo, drafting a young star forward in Paul George, creating a dynamic pairing with their sophomore guard Stephen Curry. With a legitimate young core forming in New York, they weren't in a hurry to trade away their young pieces as they looked to be a contender in the near future. And in a very similar boat, the Bobcats were also creating an electrifying duo, as they drafted the would-be Rookie of the Year DeMarcus Cousins with the 2nd pick, now teaming up an exciting big man with their promising guard Harden, and they'd be sure to have one of the league's scariest pick-and-roll duos soon enough. But for now, there was only one real contender in the East, with LeBron still joining the Heat in this reality to form the Big Three in order to overcome the seemingly invincible Celtics. And with LeBron earning this season's MVP to go along with Miami having the top record, partially thanks to Wade being even better now with no wear and tear on his body, and the outcome of the season would be obvious.
And Miami is headed to the NBA Finals for another matchup with
the Portland Trail Blazers and their own Big Three, led by one of the best centers in the entire league. Greg Oden has been living up to the Shaq hype and comparisons over the last few seasons, working his way into All-Star and All-NBA lineups, and in his first ever finals of his career, he was easily one of the best players on the court, taking advantage of the weak center position from Miami and was giving them a run for their money. But that would all just be a red herring, because the Heat were flat out the best team in basketball by a long shot in this reality. There was just no stopping King James and Dwayne Wade at this level, wrapping up this series against Portland in 5, and they weren't only winning the championship here after crushing the Blazers, because the next season they'd play against the Nash and Amari Suns in the finals. And while this was a long time coming for Phoenix, who has been attempting to make the finals for the last 6 years, unfortunately their climb to the top of the NBA wouldn't be a storybook finish up against Miami, with the Heat taking this one for the repeat, and with no signs of their stars slowing down anytime soon, it was beginning to look like their run may never end. But one star had other plans.
Why not? Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league? I don't see why. Why?
Of course, at some point in this video, we'd be talking about Derrick Rose. And while LeBron stole his MVP in 2011, it was only a matter of time before one of the league's biggest what-ifs ever would be earning an MVP of his own. While Miami has been running the league for the past 2 years, the Bulls have been quietly developing their players and building around their star PG, with guys like Joakim Noah breaking out as the Defensive Player of the Year and Luol Deng playing well enough to earn an All-Star appearance, leading to the East's best record in preparation for the playoffs. But surprisingly, in the conference finals, the Heat were nowhere to be found, as the Bulls were up against the Orlando Magic. And that's because in the first round against the 7th-seeded Knicks, Miami was being introduced to the future of basketball. Not only were they about to introduce us to the high-paced three-point shooting revolution thanks to Steph, but they were building a formidable team through the draft, and I'm not just talking about Paul George, because they landed Anthony Davis in the 2012 draft after only having 3% odds. Somehow they managed to get the top pick and undoubtedly build the best young core in the NBA so far. The Rookie of the Year was already NBA ready and was going toe-to-toe with veteran Chris Bosh, and dismantling the Heat's defense with a Curry and AD pick and roll. The Knicks weren't just winning here, but they were sweeping the defending champs. And despite losing a close series to the Orlando Magic in the next round, it was obvious we'd be seeing a lot of New York in the future. But for now, the Chicago Bulls were on a mission and didn't care who was waiting for them in the conference finals. Led by the MVP, they were stampeding straight past the Magic to stamp their ticket for a finals appearance. And as all of this is happening in the Deep East, out west the Thunder are storming through their conference. Their roster looked incredibly underwhelming, with most of the starters either being ancient or typically a bench player, but but the combined efforts of Westbrook and Kevin Durant was going to make up for all the shortcomings of their supporting cast. Entering the Western Conference Finals as favorites against Kevin Love, and in quick fashion, the Thunder would be preparing to face the Bulls in the finals. And while the point guard battle would be a thing of beauty, with the league's two most athletic PGs going at each other, this series is where the Thunder's lack of depth would show the most, with Kevin Durant being swarmed by Chicago's #1 rated defense, giving the Bulls the edge at home through the first 2 games in the series. But with the team's season on the line, Durant was going to step up, breaking out for a huge Game 3 in front of his home fans, scoring at will by simply outclassing the Bulls' elite defense, filling the stadium with hope that this finals matchup was far from over. But as this game comes to the end, those hopes could be crushed.
Rose crosses over the fadeaway.
Let me step back and kiss myself.
Oh my gosh,
MVP
it's over.
time. Windy City Assassin does it again.
Following the electrifying shot, all of the energy was sucked out of the Thunder organization, and going into Game 4, the Bulls were wrapping this one up to close out the series, winning their first NBA Finals since Michael Jordan brought a ring to the city in 1998. This could very well be the start of the Derrick Rose era in the NBA. But before we look to see just how far Rose can lead this Bulls team, we gotta check out the rest of the league because a lot has changed. For example, the Bobcats have been continuing to build around James Harden and Cousins by adding the young big Vucevic to complement Boogie, and also adding the veteran Gilbert Arenas to help develop James. Indiana is another team to watch out for, as they've built the league's most promising backcourt after drafting not only Kyrie Irving, but also getting Damian Lillard in the mix. They'll likely give up 120 a night with this guard duo, but their goal is to score 121. But the only issue is they're lacking any other pieces, so they'd end up with a rough record again, but we're moving in the right direction. A team that isn't moving in the right direction, however, is the Rockets, because even though McGrady has led the league in scoring for a few seasons now, they haven't made the playoffs in years, partially because he lost his running mate Yao, who left to Cleveland in this year's free agency. And with T-Mac on the last year of his contract, there was questions if he would stay. The only bright side for Houston was that they were able to draft Giannis with the first pick in this year's draft, meaning they may just have hope if they can actually build around him, which they failed to do with T-Mac and Yao. And another star whose team has been letting him down is Kobe Bryant, whose roster has been steadily declining since his last finals appearance. The Lakers have not added any help to his team, and his only story worth talking about was that with no injuries, he was still playing at a high level for longer and was closing in on surpassing Kareem for all-time points. Speaking of scoring, another one of the league's best scorers, Carmelo Anthony, has finally left the Nuggets, joining Golden State, but their team wasn't doing much better than Denver was. And finally, let's talk about the Blazers, a team that was once a center point of this experiment with Greg Oden, but with Aldridge leaving for the Nets, they haven't found much success, of course, until now. Because this year, he was finally being crowned as the MVP of the league. After multiple seasons of being one of the top centers, now he was titled the best player. And in the playoffs, they had no issue in the much weaker Western Conference, with no other team's big man being able to slow him down. It was only a matter of time before they'd walk right into the conference finals and win the West for the second time now. And they were going to be up against the defending champion Bulls, which meant we had a battle on our hands between the last two MVPs, and both were eager to continue building their legacies, with each playing their A game, sending heavy punches one after another, but neither side was looking to let up. The two stars were evenly matched as far as how many points they could put up on the board, and each team's supporting cast was nearly identical in production, resulting in the series being knotted up after the first 4. So now, with Game 5 taking place in Portland, fans were hoping for their team to take over, but Derrick Rose unfortunately had very different plans. Having his best game of the series so far, dropping in a whopping 46 points, leaving the Blazers completely stunned at home. But these finals weren't over just yet, because in Game 6, only one loss from elimination, the Blazers were looking to step up big on the road themselves, with both Greg Oden and Brandon Roy having their own best games of the series, leading to a small lead come the end of the game, where anything was possible. We have a huge Game 6 here in the finals. Derrick Rose and the Bulls are trying to repeat, and the Trailblazers are trying to survive, force a Game 7. Derrick Rose versus Oden, two of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history. Derrick Rose nowhere to go in the paint, tries to force it up over Oden, who gets the rebound. Jason Terry now pushing the pace. Brandon Roy, they're pushing it on the fast break. Carney back to Roy. Roy gets some jump open. Roy, his leader, rolls in. 3-point lead, Portland. Chicago now still with plenty of time here late in the game. Derrick Rose, one-on-one with Jason Terry. The spin move, head of steam. The pump, nowhere to go. Tyreek Evans in the corner. Derrick Rose can't seem to score in these final moments. Tyreek, the Portland defense is smothering Chicago. A minute 13 remaining. They give it to Drew Gooden. Swinging around, Luol Deng. His pump, the tough three. It's in! Luol Deng, they counted as a 2. What a shot from Deng there, trying to keep the Bulls right back in this. Brandon Roy driving to him. Tyreek Evans sticking him. A tough floater is good. This could still go either way here in these final moments. Up by 3 is the Portland Trail Blazers. 50 seconds left. Derrick Rose looking to keep his Chicago Bulls alive here. Jason Terry. Rose hasn't been able to do much yet, but Derrick Rose driving it now. A 4-to-steam open lane. That's good. 1-point game. Portland with it again. The Bulls defense does not seem to be able to stop them, but right here, maybe they get it. Tyreek Evans the steal. Tyreek pushing the pace to Derrick Rose, MVP. A wide open pace. His leg gives him the lead. What a sequence late if you're the Chicago Bulls. What a meltdown late if you're the Portland Trail Blazers. They still have time though. Brandon Roy with it. Luol Deng guarding him. Roy, possibly the biggest moment of his career. Raymond Felton wide open. Raymond Felton might have just lost him the finals. They had a foul to give, so it's Tyreek Evans on the line. He hit the first one. The second one to give him a 3-point lead is good. Portland not using a timeout. I'm not sure if they have any or if they're just not using it. But down by 3 with 12 seconds left. You have to go quick. Almost got a backcourt. Brandon Roy right over Dang. Horrible shot. What is the 2K AI doing? That might be over. With the awful shot selection from Roy, Chicago was pulling off the repeat, now earning 2 rings already in Derrick Rose's career with no injuries, but their celebration wouldn't be lasting forever. Because even though the next season had some exciting headlines like Jokic being drafted to the Rockets to join Giannis, and the Magic making a huge splash by drafting a completely healthy Embiid to join Dwight, as well as signing Brandon Roy in free agency, there was still a much bigger story at hand, which was the rise of Stephen Curry, who was now averaging over 30 a night and was the hottest player in the entire association, earning this year's MVP and pairing that with Anthony Davis, who is injury-free, now fully developed, averages some monster numbers to be in the MVP race himself, and it was obviously going to be a formula for success. In the playoffs in round 1 as the top seed, smoking the Atlanta Hawks, then going on to round 2 up against the Miami Heat, who were still a very good team at this point, with Dwayne Wade still at a very high level, yet New York would still win, and we're ready to face another just as stacked team. In fact, it was another New York team with the Brooklyn Nets, who had a culmination of some of the NBA's most injured players, with Kawhi Leonard headlining the roster, but also now having a star, Gordon Hayward, as his running mate, and lastly, DeMarcus Cousins, who had just joined the free agency during the offseason. So come the conference finals, we are about to be witnessing 2 Eastern Conference juggernauts duke it out with a mix of multiple injury-prone players on each side. And it would be the New York Knicks making the first strike in the series, as Brooklyn was struggling to guard Steph early, but with adjustments made in game 2 to their defense and combining that with a huge showing from DeMarcus Cousins, this one was getting all knotted up after 2, now changing locations down the street to Brooklyn. And it looked as if the Nets had this one all figured out after the huge game 2 victory on the road. Their stars had yet another big game and were actually taking the lead over the Knicks. But don't count Steph Curry and his group out just yet, because they were going to completely rally right back into the series, putting up monster performance one after another for the next 4 games straight. And despite Brooklyn having more big names, the Knicks had quality over quantity. And in what would go down as an instant classic all-time playoff series, New York was the one coming out on top. The Knicks win a really close one against the Nets, a really exciting series, and hopefully you all enjoyed it, because we're going to be seeing it a whole lot for the next several years. Because going into the finals, the New York Knicks were making quick work of a Mavericks team led by Dirk without any other all-star, and while it was actually incredibly impressive for the Mavericks to even be here, they were losing in the blink of an eye, giving the Knicks their first ring since 1973, and the first for Steph, Paul George, and Anthony Davis, and the start of a potential dynasty. From here, for the next several years, the Nets and Knicks were both the clear top super teams in the NBA, and the Eastern Conference Finals would essentially act as the NBA Finals, because going into the actual finals in 2016, ironically, New York was defeating Knicks legend Carmelo Anthony, who was now in the Clippers with DeAndre Jordan and Zach Randolph, ending this series in 4. Then in 2017, the Nets finally broke through to get to the finals up against Westbrook and Greg Oden, still looking to win a ring, but in the face of Brooklyn, it was going to be Boogie and Hayward, each getting a ring in this reality, winning after 6. only for the Knicks to get back on top after beating Kemba Walker's Nuggets easily. And then finally in 2019, we now had the Knicks going up against the Thunder, who bolstered the same team as they did in 2017, but yet again they were falling to New York's finest, meaning now the Knicks have won 4 rings in the last 5 seasons, creating another dynasty run for Curry in this reality. And alongside that, the league awards were looking very different as well over the past few years, with new stars rising and of course some old stars retiring like Kobe Bryant, finishing things up with the Lakers, but not before first surpassing Kareem for the points record all time. But we'd also see 2 other legends retire, with T-Mac and Yao calling it quits, after now seeing these legends have a much more successful career, just like some of our stars in New York as well. But a new group was about to take center stage, because the Knicks and Nets dynasty rivalry could be stopping, with their depth both completely deteriorating as they attempt to pay their megastars all max contracts. So now the rest of the league was ready for a shot, starting with LeBron, who was being forced to lift his game up another octave with Dwayne Wade retiring at the end of last season. Don't be fooled though, Miami still had a solid group with guys like Bosh, Vucevic, and Julius Randle rounding out their roster. LeBron was continuing to put up the same insane numbers that we've been seeing for the past few seasons, albeit without any playoff success due to the super teams in the way, but now he would have a legit chance to make progress, leading the Miami Heat to the 1st seed, which gave them an actual shot at winning the East, since the only other team in the conference at this point who could realistically compete would be Embiid's Magic. Because while the Bulls drafted Ja to create the most athletic backcourt in existence with Derrick Rose, he was still only a rookie and wouldn't be a large enough difference maker. Likewise, the other most notable team being the Celtics, who somehow managed to still get Tatum and Jaylen Brown in this reality, would face the same fate of being too young. So by the time the Eastern Conference Finals rolled around, nobody was surprised that it was a battle of Florida, with each team fighting hard, but eventually leading to a Game 7 where LeBron closed the series out with a blowout, finally getting himself back to the finals after a very long overdue wait. And out west, things were practically mirroring the East, with the Thunder now hopeful for a shot to win it all without the Knicks and Nets in their way, working through their conference and awaiting a conference finals appearance, where on the other side, their opponent was being decided by a battle of LA. Carmelo was still leading this group and eager to get back to the finals, but those ambitions were put to rest quickly. The Lakers drafted the Rookie of the Year Zion Williamson, and now healthy, both with injuries and diet choices, he was already an all-star caliber player, pairing with a very old Gasol looking to make one final push, all anchored by Joakim Noah in the paint, but most importantly, led by Damian Lillard, who joined that year in free agency, sweeping the Clippers and preparing for Oklahoma City. And while the prior MVP Odin was clearly outmatching LA's old bigs in the paint, this Lakers team could be very scary for years to come. But as of now, the Thunder were heading to yet another finals, where Greg Oden was trying again to win his 1st ring, only to fall short once more, being swept by LeBron James on a mission like never seen before, finally adding another ring to his resume and putting Miami back on the map again. But the East wouldn't be on the map for much longer, cause things were starting to flip into the West's favor, with the MVP now headed out to Kevin Durant, who has unfortunately been on an awful Grizzlies team for all this time. And as we alluded to earlier, the Lakers were beginning to look like one of the best teams in all of basketball, with the rise of Zion Williamson already early in his career. But ultimately, our story for the millionth time would turn back to Greg Oden, one of the players most questioned when it comes to injuries, but still looking to prove his mark, making his way all the way back to the NBA Finals again, this time for a rematch with the Knicks, who snuck back here. But this finale was different than all the rest. You could feel a change in the atmosphere here versus the other Finals appearances for Greg. It's been years of letdown, making it this far only to fall to some of the East top teams over and over again. Although that wasn't the case this time, with Oden's best final series of his entire career putting up a monstrous double-double average in an effort to make that final leap over the hump, and he would do just that. Finally, OKC was winning a championship, and one of sports' most promising untold stories would unfold with a championship, and he wouldn't be the last star to do that. Cause in 2022, Zion and Dame were getting the Lakers to the finals, where Williamson was face-to-face with LeBron, the player that he's drawn multiple comparisons to, and in a passing of the torch type of moment, Zion was looking like the better player in this series, winning his first career championship only 3 seasons into the NBA, with more to come. Again, playing the Heat in 2023, this time with Zion as the MVP of the entire league, and the results would duplicate, with another championship coming to the young star. Unfortunately though for Zion, the Grizzlies were defeating him the next year to earn a trip to the finals against the Wizards, and Memphis happened to be the location for a reunion between Westbrook and KD, and they were a step ahead of the Precious Achiuwa-led Wizards. Yes, I said the Precious Achiuwa-led Wizards. Somehow they beat LeBron and Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose and Ja. I don't even know what's going on with 2K. It goes without saying, the Grizzlies were sweeping this team, and before we kick off the final season, let's recap what's happened. Last few seasons, here's the MVPs. It does say LeBron for 2023. I think I messed up the save file and had a resim, and LeBron got it, but originally it was Zion like we talked about earlier. Last couple of Rookie of the Years, Killian Hayes actually winning it was kind of surprising. And then the Defensive Player of the Years we've been tracking for a while, 4 Kevin Durant in a row after we had like 8 Josh Smiths in a row. And real fast, before we get into the last season, I just want to look at some of these teams around the league because this final season is going to go pretty quick. There's a pretty cool story that we're going to be talking about, so it's going to fly by. And some of these teams are really good. For example, the Utah Jazz, who have Victor Wembanyama and Doncic. The Magic, who are stacked with Embiid, Porzingis, and Trae Young. And definitely the Rockets, who I can't believe have not done anything. They've barely made the playoffs at all, and they've had Giannis and Jokic for years. At one point, they also had Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler. I don't know what's going on with this 2K sim, and it's really just been a couple of super teams dominating. And some of these good teams, I'm surprised I haven't seen them at all. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get into the final season. And the story I was alluding to was Lonzo Ball joining the Lakers in the offseason. A player whose injury story and coming back from these trials has inspired thousands of fans has a chance in this reality as one of the top PGs and was helping the Lakers compete for another ring. Making it all the way to the finals as you'd expect with this dream pairing with a healthy Zion, and in one final moment, we'd be seeing some historically injured players overcoming those odds once more. With the Lakers winning another championship, proving just how great a healthy Zion could have been, along with all the others that we've seen throughout the sim.